Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to TSK F1. My name is Rich, and this is where you can get your latest F1 news live at 9 a.m. Monday to Friday. And we're going to jump straight into the title news article. Toto Wolff from Mercedes, the Mercedes boss, has been speaking about the deficit which Mercedes have suffered in terms of development because of the porpoising issue at the beginning of the season. Kind of comparing the difference. Good morning, Andy. Kind of comparing the difference in the porpoising as to the advantage that Mercedes had with their engine at the beginning of the hybrid era. So they're basically saying that they're 10 months behind on development because they really had no idea what was causing the porpoising issue. Now, what is interesting is that the message out of Mercedes is extremely clearly that they know what was wrong with this year's car. And I'd love to know what you guys think. Do we think it's as simple as Mercedes getting the size 0 pods, if you like, getting that wrong? Is that whole idea wrong? It's a difficult one because I don't think any of us are aerodynamicists. And we've seen some of their staff say the area above the underfloor is, well, the area of the floor, the top of the floor is the issue, which there's a lot of it because of the 0 pod. But it's an interesting one that they can really dial down and say it's cost them 10 months in development time and actually admitting they had no clue whatsoever. Though he said that Lewis and George and basically the team at large are playing the long game because they're so confident they know what the issue is, that they know good stuff is going to come back. He said they will carry over some of their sweetness in the car, and we've maybe lost 8 to 10 months in terms of development because we couldn't figure out what was wrong. But we believe that we understand where the gap comes from. So Toto Wolff is extremely confident that Mercedes have figured this out. Do you think they have? I don't think they'd say anything like this without actually knowing. This has been the murmurings for a while, hasn't it? This has been the murmurings for a while out of Mercedes from different people within the team that they do know what's going on and what the gap is. And it's interesting that they're actually saying as if it's the entire gap. They know where it's coming from, especially with less wind tunnel time for Red Bull coming up as well, which is interesting. Merck was saying they can pinpoint the day that the dog design decision was made. Really? Is that true, Harry? I think everyone already is focusing on next year's car, mate. I'm not sure anyone's doing anything on this year's car anymore, mate. Royals, I'm not sure anyone's doing anything on this year's car. But I suppose in the process of design, you would be able to, if you know what is wrong, you'll be able to determine when a decision was made to do something. I'm just really interested to see. So I don't know what it is, but there's something within me that would like the Mercedes to turn up next year looking similar but faster. You know, I kind of want the 0 pod thing to work just because it's so different. The same as I wanted the Ferrari sort of swimming pool dipped side pods to work. Because it's just so different to what we're used to seeing. It'd be brilliant if a few different ideas would work. They've created a new concept and vastly underestimated their understanding of it. Yeah, pretty much, Harry. I reckon so. Am I usually so starters then development come good towards the end? No, they're not. No, they're not at all. That isn't what they are. You'd normally during Mercedes' success, you'd find them hit the ground running and shock everyone, and teams like Red Bull would tend to get closer towards the end of the season, I guess, as resource from Mercedes was put onto another put on to the next season. But no, I really wouldn't say Mercedes are slow starters unless I'm remembering wrong. But I wouldn't put Mercedes as slow starters at all. But it is an interesting one. Well, a gamble, it didn't pay off. It hasn't paid off this season, but who knows? If they really have identified the issue, then maybe it will pay off next season. We'll see, I suppose, in pre-season testing next season how vastly different the car is. I wonder if the zero pods will be gone. I wonder if that is what it is. I really hope it's not that simple. Honestly, I don't know what Merck got wrong, but it does leave a different dynamic with respect to how close them and Red Bull are. Yeah, I hope, as a Formula One fan, Mercedes are closer next season. I would love a Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull fight for the championship next season. Do we think that Mercedes are going to be back on pace next season? That's another question. I believe they can. I think, if there's two teams that can close such a gap, you'd probably be looking at Mercedes and Red Bull that can close gaps, wouldn't you? So let's move on to get through some more of the news. There's bits and bobs. Does everyone think George coming into Merck has ignited the spark in Lewis? Not especially, no. I don't think Lewis needs that. Not in a bad way. I think Lewis beats George anyway. I don't think it's done anything in particular for Lewis, honestly. I think he's very focused on what he needs to do, and if he's got the car, I think he soundly beats George next season, my opinion. Helmut Marko has been talking about more to do with the Red Bull wind tunnel, or the new Red Bull wind tunnel. And he basically has said the choice to build a new wind tunnel is idiotic from Red Bull because everything is leaning towards CFD. Now, I had mentioned in previous live streams, if you go back and look, that I thought that Red Bull would politic towards not having wind tunnels, because there is this thing going on within F1 where all teams have agreed in principle that there should be no wind tunnels by 2030 or from the 2030 seasons. No details have been worked out on that. That's just the broad. Do we think we should get rid of them, guys? And everyone has said yes, because they cost an astronomical amount to run and things like that. So Helmut Marko has branded Red Bull getting a new wind tunnel as idiotic. What they actually use right now is an old RAF wind tunnel that was repurposed for Arrows, then Jaguar, I think, F1 this is, and then Red Bull have taken it on as well. And the problem that they've got with the current wind tunnel is it's not energy efficient. It's not thermally regulated, and also the building which houses the wind tunnel is a listed building, and in the UK you can't knock it down and build a new one, and the changes that they can make to it are extremely limited. So Red Bull have already built the building for the wind tunnel on site at their main base in Milton Keynes. But if you like, the innards of the wind tunnel aren't there. So he's still calling it an idiotic decision from Red Bull to make this wind tunnel. Now, I'm wondering if they're still tentatively politicking to see if before they get the stuff fitting into the wind tunnel, if they can get more of a reaction to get rid of wind tunnels so that they don't have to make their wind tunnel. I don't know how far along the process is, but the report does say, well, Helmut Marko has said that the building is there, but it's not being fitted out yet. That'll take the next 2 to 3 years. So it does have me wondering whether Red Bull, much like with the powertrains, are going to try to politic more with the wind tunnel ban so that they don't have to spend on that wind tunnel. What do you guys think? They're totally capable of it. They did it with the engines and the Honda thing, and they got everyone to agree to an engine freeze, which they've now profited from massively. I'm going to be doing a thing about Red Bull powertrains as well, maybe today. I'm going to be making a video, so keep an eye out on the channel for that. But Red Bull are very, very, very politically astute within Formula One, I think. And I still think there's games afoot here with the whole wind tunnel thing. This is obviously separate from the cost cap situation. This is all to do with it costs tens of millions of pounds to make a wind tunnel, and they probably don't want to. So, yeah, there's that. I think there's more going on here. But also, what he did count on... needs cost analysis from Red Bull, doesn't it? If they think gains profit... Well, yeah, both Helmut and Christian Horner are speaking on the fact that simulation is the way forward. And I've not seen any other team principals particularly banging that drum that they don't want to use their wind tunnel. But it could just be the reports I'm seeing. But the only ones... While they've all in principle agreed to get rid of wind tunnels, Red Bulls are the only ones in that we're just about to get a new wind tunnel sort of thing. While Aston Martin have just built one and McLaren have just built one, I think theirs are done. Whereas Red Bull are right at the beginning of that expenditure, you know. Another sort of interesting thing that he touched on. Obviously, Red Bull lost Mateschitz, the actual sort of owner and boss of the entire Red Bull group, not just Red Bull Formula One. And Helmut was saying how Mateschitz allowed autocracy, I think that's the word, where Red Bull F1 was exempt to certain brand rules. They could do their own thing to a certain extent. They had their own budget and things like that, and they worked while they were Red Bull. They were very much their own entity, the F1 team. And it seems like the new leadership of Red Bull are okay with that situation continuing as well. So for Red Bull fans, for Formula One really, that's a good thing, because it means that Red Bull as a brand, as a team, shouldn't be going anywhere. It had been running for a long, long time anyway, without particular input from Mateschitz, how Helmut Marko was spoken. Like, obviously he was involved, but he wasn't day-to-day involved, always there, things like that. And it looks like the new leadership, ownership of the Red Bull group as a whole are quite okay for Red Bull F1 to continue as they are. So I think that's a good thing. That's a good thing for the sport, because whether you're a fan of Red Bull or not, they are huge. They are the Constructors' Champions, and they are the Drivers' World Champions at the moment. And yeah, I think it's a good thing for the sport that they're continuing. But we'll see. Maybe we'll get something official on that. I don't know. But he was speaking that conversations have been had and continued investment looks like the way forward for the Red Bull group, which is a good thing. Barbecue Man Gaming, cost cap is cost cap. Doesn't matter if you get profits, you have to stick to it. And I think you can spend more. What? I don't know. We weren't talking about the cost cap. I don't know. But there we go. So Red Bull continuing within F1. Next news story. Now, you may recognise this chap. I'm probably about to absolutely ruin his name. But I'm going to say Guillaume Roquelin. But over the radio and in media, we hear him called Rocky. Right? So you will have heard him on the radio, maybe back in Seb Vettel Red Bull days, a lot. So I don't even know what that is, Harry. I'm not even going to lie. I don't know what that is. He's been commenting on the fact that he feels that Max Verstappen is weak technically. And he was speaking generally. He was the engineering division lead from 2015 to 2022 for Red Bull, and now he's in charge of Red Bull Juniors, which is quite a big thing because they've got lots of juniors. And he was just talking generally how, as a racing driver, pure speed, natural talent, Max Verstappen is an absolute boss and fast, very direct, knows what he wants, and all of this. But then he compared him to Sebastian Vettel and said Sebastian Vettel, when he came to Red Bull, was a more complete driver, and he was extremely engaged with the engineers about moving forward and how they can work together. Whereas Max Verstappen literally does all of his talking on the track. But the lad couldn't do a quick oil change. So it was just an interesting comment, that, because he's still within the Red Bull group, and it's not derogatory what he's saying. He's just comparing the drivers, and he's saying compared to Sebastian Vettel that Max Verstappen is weak technically, but as a pure pace racing driver, Max Verstappen is he literally calls him a boss. He just says how fast. This isn't the real pit lane simulator. I have no idea what that even means, Sam. Some curious comments this morning. Some curious comments that make no sense this morning. But never mind. And I thought it was a really interesting thing because we heard sort of recently fairly similar news about Lewis Hamilton, I think. I think it was Lewis Hamilton, where someone, was it within Mercedes? Someone will know in chat, commented that technically he isn't there, or his communication over technical matters isn't quite there. But his driving, obviously, is where it's at. And it seems like the article and what Rocky is saying is similar, that Max is an absolute boss on track, and that's where he does his talking. He still communicates, but not as well as Seb Vettel, and he just basically said Sebastian Vettel was a more complete racing driver. So I just thought I'd bring that to you guys, because Rocky, if you've been watching F1 a long time, he's been around F1 a long time, and it's worth taking that on board, isn't it? He says Sebastian Vettel asked a lot of questions, took a lot of notes when he arrived, and he was very thorough. It's no coincidence he won several titles. He was more prepared technically and mentally. I think maybe Max has more natural talent. That's what he's relied on most, but Sebastian was the most complete. Max has always been an absolute boss. He has enormous self-confidence. He knows what he wants and is very direct. But I'll be honest, Max is weak technically compared to other drivers we've worked with. I still think he has a lot of progress to make. And what I think as well with that is what I was saying in stream over on pit lanes, when people were saying about him being at his peak. I don't know. I've said that I don't think Max is at his peak. What is he, 25? I don't think Max is at his peak yet. That'll probably, be in 3 to 5 years, I'd say, as a racing driver. Of course, he could be peaking very, very early. He could be doing a Vettel and peaking early. But that's been my opinion for some time. That Max isn't in his prime, and I'm really surprised anyone thinks that. I don't know why people say he's in his prime, actually, because he's 25 years old, but who knows? Who knows about that? Who knows? So, next bit of news. How long have we been? 20 minutes. Okay, this is good. Carlos Sainz. Now, he's pretty much called this season a nightmare, which isn't a shock. And he's just said, this season has been a nightmare, to tell you the truth, because of all the retirements. I was slow when the car was fast, and now I'm fast, but we're not as fast as we were before. Nothing is right. I'm confident the team will build another great car like the one we have this year, and we will learn from our mistakes. I will learn from the mistakes I made this year, and we'll be more ready to fight next year. So, what do we think of Carlos Sainz? Excuse me. What do we think of Carlos Sainz? I don't think it's short or wrong. Excuse me, sorry. I don't think it's wrong of him to call this season a nightmare, really. I've found this season, I really wanted Sainz to prove people wrong this season because he's done very, very, very well quietly elsewhere for many seasons now. Wherever he's been, he's done a very, very good job. And this season, though, it's like all his mistakes have just happened while Ferrari have also made mistakes, and it's just gone into this pot of, oh, Carlos, you know what I mean? You want him to, I don't know. I find him quite harmless as well as a competitor, as a racer. Sometimes you might look at a Lewis or a Max or other drivers and just think, ugh. Like they might make a comment. Whereas Carlos Sainz, he seems to just go about his business. And I quite like him, and I really wanted this to be a bit of a breakout season for him. But hopefully, maybe he might get some solid runs at the end of the season, and he might take some form into the off season and things like that. Seems like he's almost trying too hard. It took a breath and relaxed to come to him. He's very talented. Yeah, it's an interesting one because certainly Ferrari have made their mistakes with him as well, haven't they? But he has made mistakes as well this season. He has made mistakes. Prefer Sainz Senior, but that's because rallying. Yeah, but they do bits of that together. He just doesn't compete in rallying. I bet he'd be fairly rapid. Maybe not WRC, but I bet he'd be rapid because they definitely practice rallying together because we've seen it. I think he's performed very well. He has a lot of errors, unfortunately, and some poor luck, which has impacted his season. Yeah, for sure. It does seem like when he's been on it, he's made mistakes, and when he's not, the car exactly. Yeah, it's been a very up and down season. I think as well, I'm a little bit disappointed because there was a lot going around about the mentality of having a multi-year contract. And Valtteri Bottas and Sainz actually had spoken to the value of having a multi-year contract and what that does for the confidence of a driver. You're safe. You can drive with freedom because every race you're not thinking, is this going to be the one that I mess up and I lose my seat? And I seem to remember quite vividly just at the Australian Grand Prix weekend. I could be wrong. Australian Grand Prix weekend, he got his 2-year contract, but then he crashed out in Australia, and I was gutted for him because I seem to remember he looked he just had a nightmare weekend. So I was hoping that he might be able to just chill and grow into that Ferrari sort of team and things like that. Though I think him and Leclerc is a great team. I think he's more consistent than Leclerc he was last season. Leclerc is not there yet. I agree. I agree on the Leclerc thing as well. When people put Leclerc up with the Lewises or Maxes of this world, I don't think Leclerc's quite there yet either. But he's still young. I'm not sure how old Leclerc is, but he's still not quite there for me. Obviously, he's rapid, but there are levels to it, and certain levels literally come with age and experience. And like we've just discussed with Max, I think there are still some levels for some of these drivers to get to, which is scary and it's awesome. But yeah, just Sainz commenting on a nightmare season, which I think we'd all kind of agree with, sadly, for him. And we'll just wrap up here with a little bit of Alex Albon here, because he's come back into Formula One and he's done really, really well, I think. I think most people would agree he's done really well at Williams, though the only problem with Williams is the teammate barometer is really low with Latifi, isn't it? So it's difficult, but I think even on the strength of his own performances, you can look at what Albon has done and say he's done well since coming back into Formula One. And he said truthfully, the main thing I wanted when I got back into Formula One was to stay in F1. You've got a 1-year contract and there's no guarantee that there's another year beyond that, but he's ticked that box. And he didn't know where he was at when he was out of F1, because while he was driving DTM, you don't know where you're at because it's so completely different to Formula One. But he does feel like he's done a good job and he's proved himself and what he can do. So I do wonder what the future holds for Alex Albon, because I think officially he's still sort of on loan from Red Bull, right? I think much like Gasly, Albon needs to cut ties with Red Bull. For a lot of drivers, I don't particularly see a future within Red Bull, because the idea really, you want to get to that top Red Bull team, don't you? Now, there's going to be another seat in a few years because, Perez is a bit older and he isn't going to be there forever, but Max is going to be there for ages. But if you're going up to the Red Bull team, it's going to have to be a very special talent that can knock Max off his perch within that squad. So it does make me wonder if he's still officially on loan from Red Bull, because I'm not sure. And what would the future hold? Now, it wouldn't be such a bad thing to try and get a long-term contract with Williams, I don't think. I think they're trying to move forward and they're showing flashes of more pace than they've had in recent years. So I'm not sure what to do with Max. It's like when people were saying about De Vries going to Williams. It didn't make much sense. It doesn't make much sense that De Vries has gone to AlphaTauri, other than he's in F1 and he should be in F1. I don't see where he goes from there, but it's good that he's in Formula One because he should be. Do they want anyone to push Max? Well, I would go with yes, honestly, just because Red Bull seem to sort of like conflict, kind of. I don't know, that's the vibe I get off them. I feel like they would, though. I feel like they would invite that in somewhat. But there we go, just Albon saying he's feeling confident and is happy with what he's done within Formula One since his return. And honestly, I think most people would agree that he's done well since his return. But there you go. There's healthy competition drives results for sure. Well, yeah, but is it healthy? Is it healthy? It depends. It depends where it is, doesn't it? But make sure you've hit that like button on the stream and subscribe to the channel, guys. That is the end of this morning's TSKF1 news. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to go live over on Pit Lane Sim Racing on Facebook Gaming, if you'll come over there and join me. But please do make sure you've hit the like button and also subscribe to the channel. I'll be back in the morning on this channel, though, at 9 AM. Thanks a lot, guys, and I shall see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.